The first punch knocked Tommy down quicker than any of us anticipated. One moment, my 73-year-old friend was holding his ground. The next, he was sprawled across the sticky bar floor, blood seeping from his split lip. That's how we deal with us. Dinosaurs who don't know when to shut up, laughed the biker with knuckle tattoos. Hate on the right hand, ride on the left. A big guy, his leather vest straining against a beer gut, a Confederate flag patch on his sleeve. Tommy spat blood, his arthritic hands struggling to grip the floor. A Korean war vet with 2 purple hearts, now reduced to crawling at the boots of a bar thug. I reached for my phone, fingers trembling, partly from rage, partly from Parkinson's. The screen blurred through my cataracts, but I didn't need clear vision to send the text I'd drafted hours earlier when the bikers first started trouble. SOS, VFW bar. Code, homecoming. The reply came instantly. Cavalry inbound, 20 minutes, hold position. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and exchanged glances with Frank and Bill. Our silent agreement was clear. 20 minutes was a lifetime in a bar fight, but we'd faced worse odds in Vietnam. We'd hold. Son, I said to Knuckles, my voice steadier than my hands, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Veterans of foreign wars, post-7/13, had been our sanctuary for decades. Every Thursday at 1900 hours sharp, 5 old soldiers gathered at the corner table, cheap beer in hand, expensive memories on our lips. Me, Tommy, Frank, Bill, and Pete. What remained of a once larger circle, whittled down by time and illness, we weren't the only vets there. Scattered around the bar were men and women from more recent conflicts, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan. But Thursday nights belonged to us, the last of the Vietnam generation in our town. Tonight had started like any other. Tommy complaining about his new heart medication, Frank showing off pictures of his newest great-grandchild, Bill nursing a single beer to make it last, like fixed incomes didn't stretch to second rounds anymore. Pete hadn't shown, 3rd week in a row. Hospice care had strict hours, and visiting ended at 5 p.m. The bikers arrived around 8 p.m., half a dozen men in leather cuts, Iron Reaper MC patches on display. Not locals just passing through, looking for entertainment in a town with limited options. They'd been loud but tolerable, until they noticed Tommy's Vietnam veteran cap. "Hey, Pops," Knuckles called across the room. "Your hat says Vietnam. You one of those baby killers? Or just a remp who scraped latrines?" The bar fell silent. Tommy, who'd survived 2 tours and came home with shrapnel still embedded in his back, turned slowly in his seat. "Son, I'd suggest you enjoy your drink and leave the past where it belongs." "Sounds like a remp to me," Knuckles smirked to his buddies. "Real warriors don't mind talking about their kills." I put a hand on Tommy's arm. His blood pressure was already a medical concern. A confrontation wouldn't help. "Let it go," I murmured. Not worth it. But Knuckles wasn't finished. He sauntered over, beer in hand, towering over our table. "You boys look past your expiration date. Why don't you clear out? Let real men use this table. Frank, our group's diplomat, tried next." "Plenty of tables available, friend." "We'll be done soon enough. I'm not your friend, old man," Knuckles growled. Then, deliberately, he poured beer over Frank's photographs. "Oops, guess your little brat's pictures got wet." That's when Tommy stood up, 5'8", of elderly, defiance facing down 6 feet of tattooed aggression. "You need to leave," Tommy said quietly. "Now." The punch came without warning. Knuckles moved fast for a big man, his fist connected with Tommy's jaw, sending his glasses flying, and that's how we found ourselves in a standoff. Tommy bleeding on the floor, 5 other bikers moving to surround our table, and the rest of the bar patrons suddenly finding reasons to look away. The young bartender was already reaching for the phone. But who would he call? Local police were 20 minutes out, and we didn't have 20 minutes. What we did have was reinforcements of our own. "You have no idea what's coming," Bill said calmly. The first words he'd spoken all evening. The quietest of our group, he'd served as a sniper for 3 tours. His confirmed kills remained a number he'd never shared, even with us. Knuckles laughed. What's coming? Heart attacks? Ambulances? Bedtime? I helped Tommy to his seat, pressing a napkin to his bleeding lip. Frank, I said, how's your grandson doing at Fort Benning? Frank dabbed at his soaked photographs, his tone conversational. Finished Ranger School last month, deployed to the base 20 miles north, along with about 50 of his closest friends. That right? I turned to Bill. And your granddaughter? She's still flying those Apaches? Bill smiled thinly. Made captain last year, very protective of her grandpa. The bikers exchanged glances, sensing something beneath the casual conversation. What the hell are you old-timers talking about? Knuckles demanded. Just catching up, I said, checking my watch. Funny thing about veterans, we're never really alone. You threatening me? Knuckles leaned in, his breath reeking of whiskey and bad decisions. Not at all, I replied. Just suggesting you might want to finish your drinks and move along. Before he could respond, the bar's front door crashed open with military precision. 5 soldiers in Army combat uniforms entered, not rushing, but with purpose. Young, fit, radiating controlled tension. Their eyes scanned the room before locking. Onto our table. Grandpa, the tallest one, called out, You okay? Frank waved. Over here, Jake. Having a bit of a situation. Jake strode across the bar, flanked by 2 male and 2 female soldiers. No weapons visible, but they moved with the confidence of trained. Combatants. This him? Jake asked, stopping in front of Knuckles. At 6'3", Ranger qualified and combat tested. Jake made the biker look small, despite their similar builds. This gentleman, Frank said mildly, thought it appropriate to assault Tommy and destroy family photographs. Jake's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his eyes. That right, Knuckles? To his credit, Knuckles didn't back down immediately. Bar dispute, not your business, soldier boy. See, that's where you're wrong, Jake replied. Tommy served with my grandfather in the Mekong Delta, saved his life twice. He nodded toward me. Jack, there was my grandmother's brother's best friend. Bill taught me to shoot when I was 12. His gaze hardened. So this is very much my business. The bar door opened again. More uniforms. 10, then 15, then 20. Men and women, different patches and insignia, filing in quietly. What the hell is this? One of the other bikers demanded. A woman in captain's bars stepped forward, dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, posture perfect. I'm Captain Wilson, Bill's granddaughter. Got a text. There was trouble. Just a few calls, I explained. Word travels fast among military families. The bar had transformed in minutes. Where there had been indifferent civilians looking away from conflict, now stood a wall of uniforms. Army, Marines, Air Force, Navy, young faces with old eyes, veterans from recent wars standing in solidarity with veterans from older ones. Nobody called the cops, Knuckles said, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Didn't need to, Tommy replied, still dabbing blood from his lip. We called family. Captain Wilson approached our table, kneeling beside Bill. You okay, Grandpa? Bill patted her hand. Fine, Lizzie. Just some excitement to break up the evening. She turned to assess Tommy's injury with professional detachment. Need medical attention, sir? It's Tommy. And no, head worth shaving. Meanwhile, Jake and 2 other soldiers had positioned themselves between the bikers and our table. Not threatening, not advancing, just standing firm. A buffer zone of disciplined muscle and combat experience. Knuckles looked around, realizing how quickly the situation had changed. His crew of 6 now faced at least 30 military personnel, with more arriving by the minute as texts and calls spread through the nearby base. We don't want trouble with the military, he muttered, his bravado deflating. Should have thought about that before assaulting decorated veterans, Jake replied. Tommy there has 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. Frank was at Khe Sanh for the entire siege. Bill served 3 tours as a sniper. Jack was a medic who saved more lives than you've probably met in yours. How was I supposed to know? Captain Wilson interrupted. That's the point. You saw old men and assumed they were easy targets. Never occurred to you they might be more than their age suggests. The youngest biker, prospect on his cut, barely out of his 20s, tugged at Knuckles' arm. Man, let's just go. This ain't worth it. Knuckles shrugged him off, alcohol and pride still overriding good sense. We ain't done nothing illegal. He fell down, that's all. A new voice entered the conversation, the VFW post commander, a retired Marine colonel who'd been watching from the bar's office. Actually, I have clear video of you assaulting a patron. He held up his phone. Normally, I'd just call the police, but since family is handling it. He looked at Captain Wilson. How would you like to proceed, Captain? She considered for a moment. I think education might be more valuable than prosecution. The colonel nodded, then addressed the bikers. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to these gentlemen. You're going to pay for any medical attention Tommy needs. You're going to replace the damaged photographs. And you're going to spend tomorrow at the VA hospital volunteering with wounded warriors. Or, he gestured to his phone, I send this to the county sheriff and you spend tomorrow in jail. Knuckles looked ready to argue until Jake took a half step forward, his ranger tab visible on his shoulder. Choose carefully, Jake suggested quietly. The fight visibly drained from Knuckles. Fine. Sorry about your lip, old-timer, and the pictures. Tommy nodded, accepting the apology with more grace than I would have managed. Good start, the colonel said. Now, about tomorrow's volunteer session.